So in this video, we're basically going over the process of how I used the jig and some golf pencils to go ahead and make the golf coasters that I've kind of been dreaming about doing for a while. So in the first part of this video, we've basically counted out 12 of the golf pencils with the erasers, and since I found out that those erasers were getting in the way of having a good board, I'm in the process of removing the erasers and then the ferrules. Ferrules are the brass pieces that turned out to be a little bit more challenging than planned. So now that I've set the erasers off to the side, going ahead and grabbing some pliers. And what I found is the way that I'm doing it in this video, where I'm just trying to pull it straight out, doesn't quite work. I'm actually wrestling with this one, and what I found was a couple of crimps with the pliers makes it a little easier to go ahead and just pop it right off. So what you're seeing in this one is the first crimp, I've rotated a little bit, doing a second crimp, and it comes free a lot quicker, a lot easier than what I had been attempting. Now from the debris you can kind of see that some of these are still kind of a nuisance, but process basically continued. So the next step is we're actually going to super glue the pencils within the jig. Now with the way that I designed this jig, and I've got more information in the Instructables, is I created the file in Autodesk Inventor, and it was pretty tight for the pencils that I've actually got. I'm using the ring left over from where the ferrules were kind of mounted to, as well as the very tip, but what I found, and you kind of saw, was the pencil lead at the very tip is kind of scraping up against the prints. First one is the hardest, but from there it's a little easier to go ahead and feed them in. I'm kind of pressing the two sides out a little further, and in future versions I'd probably get rid of that center column, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. So the next step is to apply some super glue, and this is supposed to be fairly liquid type, fairly smooth running, but this bottle is a bit older than I had thought it was, so it's acting a bit more like a gel. In any case, your standard CA glue should work just fine for this project. So the way that I'm aligning the pencils is the gold logos on the side pencils are going face to face. I don't want to see them on the side because these were kind of second run print pencils, so not a lot of need to advertise for somewhere nowhere even close to where I'm living right now. So once you got the first ones kind of figured out, it's easier to go ahead and just turn through it. I decided that it was a little easier to go ahead and just put the super glue on and then put the pencil in. Of course, make sure you don't get your skin touching the CA glue. It's always annoying to clean that up. So now that I've got all of the pencils glued together in the jig, I let it sit for about a day before I go ahead and take it over to the CNC mill. So removing it from the jig, I find it's just like putting them in. Easier if I go ahead and pry the sides out a little bit, but a screwdriver or pliers or a pry bar or something to go ahead and help push them up and out. It's a bit useful because it's a pretty tightly packed magazine. Since I'm at the CNC mill, I went ahead and placed it roughly. Some mill work you want to be very precise. This one, I'm not that picky. So I'm going ahead and once I place it using the grid, started sliding on a few of the clamps and then finger tighten them. And then once I've got the 3 set, which is usually enough to go ahead and hold it in place, I use the wrench to go ahead and tighten them down. Just to err on the side of caution, and since I've got enough space to do it, I'll go ahead and apply the 4th clamp right now. So next step is to go ahead and set up the X, Y, and Z origin point. So because I'm kind of eyeballing this, I'm not spending a lot of time precisely aligning it with the edges, but I'm kind of aiming for the high points. And the XY is easy, but for the Z, I go ahead and put down an index card, and then we'll lower it down until the paper is stuck with a bit of pressure, raise it up, double check my position, set it down, and then time to go ahead and start milling. For this footage, we're going to see kind of the high speed pace and then even faster to show the whole process. And what you'll notice is every once in a while I'm taking a vacuum to go ahead and clean up some of the debris and just make sure that, one, you're seeing it in the footage, but also to make sure that it's not getting clogged up in the end mill bits. So I go ahead and cut out some of it, but it's about a 20-minute process, 5 to 8 minutes for each of the layers, and this does about 4 layers overall. But at this point you're kind of seeing the detail cuts of the actual vector art, where it's going down to deeper levels, and again periodically vacuuming it up. At this point the mill stopped, it's gone back to the origin point, and I'm going to go ahead and cleaned it up a little bit and then am unclamping it. In here you can kind of see that the board is still rough cut, particularly after I remove it and can see it a bit better. But at this point it's time to go ahead and start sanding them. So small piece of sandpaper would work, but I just happen to have some Dremel sanding discs laying around, and I find that they worked pretty well. Now it's pretty clean, but when this actually goes off camera and I'm sanding it a bit more, I ended up scraping up some of the graphite. A little bit of rubbing alcohol can clean that up, but at this point you're seeing the final cuts, the final coasters that I went ahead and did with this process. So enjoy, and hope you build something of your own.